What's going on, man?
What's up, man? I mean, not clearly with either of us, not as much as has been up with the Philadelphia Eagles. Holy
My goodness. Oh my gosh. Like it's crazy. So look, we have to kind of first and foremost, uh we've not recorded since Jason Kelsey announced his retirement, which we knew that was I think we kind of knew that was coming. That's not
yeah,
really a big surprise, but we kind of regardless sad. Um
yeah.
and we can go and have a whole series on just him alone. Um and not to leave out Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, no,
Um,
we lost two cornerstones of the organization,
yeah,
two huge pieces of the culture, two huge pieces of the leadership, and of that Super Bowl 52 winning team. Um, and what's great, and I know that you'll agree with me on this, as Eagles fans, as Philly fans, it's not often that we get to see our favorite players play one with one team their entire career.
no, not at all. And in fact, and we'll get into this. I was thinking about that earlier with the Phillies and Bryce Harper, because as Bryce Harper is to me as much of a cornerstone to the Phillies as Jason Kelsey is to the Eagles. There's a huge difference there in terms of where they started. Jason Kelsey started with the Eagles,
Right.
so it's super difficult to come across those players that start with the franchise and with the franchise and are Philly through and through.
Right.
And I'm not saying that doesn't apply to other players that come in. You know, we'll talk about that as we get onto this episode. But I absolutely hated to see him retire. Still playing top of his game. Um, certainly think that he had like another Pro Bowl year or two left in him,
Yeah.
and then he could fade out. But I get it. Um, you know, the game's gotten faster, whatever you can say. I think he's just ready to go, and he does have a lot of other avenues to explore at this point in his life. And you know what? Uh, let's retire millionaire and multimillionaire, and let's raise the family.
Right. Right. He's got three young girls. Um, you ideal. So at this point, he's made it through 13 NFL seasons and can still walk without a limp.
Yeah,
For the most part, can still move around fairly easily, and you want your quality of life to be as extended as possible. And as an NFL player, as an athlete of any sort, your quality of life tends to suffer when you get older. And I
right.
mean, you get paid handsomely for it for the most part.
And
But
yeah,
you know,
no,
you
and I think you and I and Danielle and others have shared the sentiment. Who wouldn't pay to see him have a show where he just goes around and tailgates around the league?
oh fuck yeah,
I mean, I'm on it. I
yeah,
sign me up. I'll drop the money right now.
yeah. No, I'm on it too. Listen, and you know what? I also volunteer my services.
Yeah, no, I'm
I
down.
mean, I, obviously, I'll need like either if I'm not being paid for it, then I'll have to have my expenses, comped. Uh, but I would definitely be involved in that if the opportunity arose.
Yeah, no, I'm down. I'm down, and no, there. It's going to be great to see where it goes. Um, unlike what we've done for several years, him and his brother run a terrific podcast. No, I kid on ourselves. We do a good one. We're just nobodies,
Yeah,
No, he's got a lot of opportunities ahead of him, and it really am glad that you know he went on. It's weird to say this. He went on top. I
oh,
realize
absolutely.
he doesn't go out as a champion, but he went on top. Um, you know, he didn't have to go himself fading out.
Right.
And I think there's a big difference between going out on top and being a limited time player and going out on top at your physical peak and being like, look, I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And still being look, he was still part of a playoff team. So, and he was already a Super Bowl winner. Godspeed, good luck, whatever. And look, Fletcher Cox, look, another cornerstone, as you said. It sucks that that he has to go, but look, I think another guy, many years in the league. It was time,
Right.
and he was not going to be definitely in as many snaps if he were to play in 2024. We'll just say that.
Right. And look, and it's not a smack in the face to him, because he honestly was the Eagles' best defensive lineman last year.
Yeah, 100%.
Or none. He was absolutely the best defensive lineman they had. One of the best defensive linemen to ever play the game. Definitely an all-time Eagle, an all-time leader for this team. Always represented the organization and the city with, he was awesome. He was a great ambassador for the city and for the team. And I feel lucky. How lucky are we that we got to see him and Jason and Lane and BG, all these guys play for the Eagles. And we're the only generation to see the Super Bowl and to have gotten to see Randall and Doc and Trot and, Eric Allen, Wes Hopkins, Andre Waters, Seth Joyner, Byron Evans, Jerome Brown. We've seen everything.
Right, and it's funny. I saw a stupid thing on Twitter earlier. It was basically like, name your favorite quarterback from your favorite team, and man, Randall, always comes to mind for me. It's QB Eagles, man. That's it.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what I wanted to say. But
right.
I also don't realize in my head, it's like, well, how many people are going to get that? You know what I mean? Yeah. Unless you're like 40-ish years old or older.
Right.
And
that's the thing. Yeah. Like, if I'm answering that question, it's currently, I would say Randall. I would say Nick Foles is up there because
he won us the prize.
Right. And Jalen right now is on that list. And I suspect that he will return to form this season and will be back to his 2022 version.
And it's funny you say that. So I did this yesterday. I was really curious. So I went to Pro Football Reference. I love these reference websites, and you take them for what they're worth. But to me, I think they're full of great stats and whatever. So I popped up Jalen Hurts, and I just was curious almost to see your take on this, because I realized that he had a down year from 2022, but comparatively, it wasn't terrible if you really stones to stones it outside of the interceptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So passing yards were roughly the same. Actually, they were more. Of course, more completions, more attempts. That's going to happen. More games played. Passer rating less. Whatever. It just things like that tend to happen. But I go down to one of the stats to me that take this for what it is, and I'm almost going to start attributing this to like war in baseball, because I don't know any other way to do this in football. Fantasy points. Jalen Hurts in 2021, the age of 23, 312 fantasy points. 2022, the great year, 378 fantasy points. 2023, granted 2 more games, but 357 fantasy points. So he basically, if you take away and you do the math there, he's close to basically how he was before the 2022 season, roughly, correct?
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah.
Man, I will take 3 years of any quarterback give me 300 plus fantasy points any day of the week.
Yes and no. Yes and no. And here's where I'm at with it, because fantasy points to me are always, it's always very misleading, or it can be very misleading, rather. When in 20, was it 2020? I think was his rookie year, or 2021.
2020. But he was minimal that year, though. I'm looking at right now. Sorry, I had to go back to. I'd flushed over to Dak. No, he wasn't minimal. Yeah, no, he was 15. Right, he's 108 points that year.
Yeah, you know who won me my championship in fantasy that year?
Was it Dak?
It was Jalen Hurts.
Oh, in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
That was my quarterback. Because I
2020.
grabbed him once he took over as the starter. I was like, oh, I'm going to take Jalen Hurts because he's putting up points. He's scoring touchdowns.
Oh, at the end of the season. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Because I forget who I had as my quarterback.
I was going to say not the whole season because Jalen in
not the whole
2020.
season.
I was saying only threw 1,000 yards. So
no. He won. No, he came in late in the season, and just the way he played, even if the team was doing shitty. So fantasy points are a great indication of an individual players, but from a quarterback's perspective, it's not a good stat for success because a quarterback can still have great, can play pretty good and even honestly play pretty mediocre and still end up putting up stats and getting fantasy points.
I say that in terms of Pro Football Reference, only because the aforementioned, I said Dak Prescott. And this is why I determined the value of Jalen Hurts. Dak had 343 fantasy points. It's less than what Jalen had last year on Pro Football Reference, which is crazy because, 343 is crazy to think because Dak is a fantasy god, if you will, right? Jalen had a better season according to Pro Football Reference than Dak did, and Jalen had a very bad season in Eagles fans' eyes.
Right.
So that tells me we have a great quarterback.
Oh,
That's kind of why I'm framing it that way.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, from that perspective, yeah. I mean, I love Jalen Hurts, and I really want him to be the guy that he can be. And I think as long as he doesn't start listening to too many outside voices, he could be. The funniest thing in the fucking world to me was Donovan I puke in the huddle McNabb trying to give Jalen Hurts advice.
Yeah.
Like, dude, stay the fuck away from him. I don't want you even breathing the same air as Jalen because I don't want your suck to infect him. Like, stats wise, wins wise, were you one of the greatest quarterbacks in Eagles history? Yeah, absolutely, you were, dude. I can't take that away from you. But off the field and as a leader, you weren't it. So shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the funny thing is, this is why I say it. I attribute the fantasy ranking on Pro Football Reference the same as WAR. Guess who never had a season over 300?
Donovan?
Yep. There you go.
All right. To be fair, it was a little bit of a different league back then.
I know.
But that said, yeah, I mean,
Donovan, and I say that because look last year. Dak had a hell of a season,
right?
Right. And if Jalen Hurts still had a better season according to their metric than Dak, Donovan should have at least, you would think, at some point have had a 300-pointer season,
right?
According to their metric, but he didn't. I get it, different league, whatever, but you know what I mean. Like it's just, no, you're right though. Don't infect them. And here's where we're gonna get into the fun part about this conversation. Man, the Eagles have made a couple moves, and they weren't all about retirements.
Oh no. Oh no. So this is going to be an underrated move, I think, but one of the big things. So the Eagles, I'm going to start with the offensive line, with what we've done with the offensive line. So when Cam Jurgens was drafted, Jason Kelce had a hand in it. He was handpicking his replacement. Cam Jurgens played well last year. would have liked to see a little bit more from him. But that said, this is a guy that didn't allow a sack this season. Okay.
So Cam Jurgens, yeah, he didn't allow a sack. And here's the thing, though. This hasn't been a thing to. I think that was under the radar. This was obviously a thing. Like, the guy has played his entire career this way.
Right.
699 snaps played, no sacks allowed, no penalties against. Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. He was decent as a guard, pretty good, right? You'd say. He's probably not even their best center that's on the roster right now, because the guy that they locked up to an extension, Mr. Landon Dickerson, who makes up the other half of the left side of their line. He's their left guard, and where you have Jordan Mailata as your left tackle. They make a pretty impenetrable left side of the offensive line. Landon Dickerson, if we're putting all our cards on the table, is the best center on the roster right now. So should Cam either get hurt or not perform to what the Eagles standard is, he can always be moved over to center. Jurgens can go to left guard. Tyler Steen, who you drafted to be a right tackle out of, I believe, Alabama, slots in as a right guard. And he had a little bit of trouble last year against Dallas. He got pressed into working against Dallas, and he was okay, not great. But, with another year under his belt and getting stronger and everything, he could be your answer there. And they also signed a guy by the name of Matt Hennessy, who is a Temple grad, was drafted in the 3rd round by Atlanta a few years back, and now he's making his way back to Philly to play for the Birds.
Yeah, no, I really like that one, and it's a good backup signing, just in case, hey, there's an injury or whatever, you slot someone in. But all arrows are pointing toward, this guy could potentially be a starter. I don't know that that's going to happen. The guy started, I think, a couple of years ago, many games for Atlanta. In fact, I think it's where he got most of his starting experience. But yeah, he's just a Temple grad. It's exciting. It's a good under the radar signing.
Yeah.
I really like that. Look, the signings we're going to get into aren't Matt Hennessy, but Matt Hennessy is a good signing, and a lot like some of these other moves the Eagles have made over the last several years, where may not always be what you or I think of as being, oh yeah, this is top of the line. It's going to be like the Pro Bowler or whatever. They're just helpful signings, and I think this could be one with Matt Hennessy,
and especially because Sua Opeta and Jack Driscoll, or not Jack Driscoll, Jack Driscoll are free agents.
Yeah.
So and Jack Driscoll was a restricted free agent. The Eagles didn't tender him, so he's an unrestricted free agent now. So we don't know if both or either of them will go elsewhere. What we do know is that we have a new number 3 receiver.
Yeah. So the Eagles have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who are 2 of my favorite receivers pretty much of all time. I mean, we're talking Fred Barnett like level stuff here. You know what I mean? No, we've got some great receivers up top, but the Eagles have thrown a cheap contract, if you really look at it, to Devontae Parker, the former Miami Dolphin, the former New England Patriot. Miami is on the hook for, I believe, 3/4 of the contract.
As far as I know, because he was cut, we only have to pay him the veteran minimum.
Yeah, it's like $1.2 million.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous like that. It's not much at all that we have to pay. And the Dolphins have to, either the Dolphins or the Pats have to pay the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it's the Patriots. I could be wrong. But yeah, he's under like a $4.6 million contract. I believe the Eagles are on the hook for 1.2.
There we
Devontae
go.
Parker essentially takes the place of Julio Jones on what he did for the 2023 team. Although at this point in his career, Devontae, obviously he's a veteran. He's got a little bit more in the tank than Julio had last year. I think it's a great signing. I don't know that he gives us more than 30 catches, 30, 40 catches, 500 yards. If that, I might be even overstating that. But I think he does give a different look, and he gets eyeballs away from Devontae Smith and AJ. So
he's the official numbers are he's got 4.69 million fully guaranteed. The Eagles are paying just 1.2 million.
So I wasn't far off.
No, you were like dead on, dude. And I mean, here's the deal. To me, he's he's like a Plaxico Burress towards the end of his career. He's going to be that big-bodied receiver you go to when you're in the red zone or down near the goal line. You run a slant. I mean, we got. Don't get. I'm not even going to get started on last year. In any event, he's going to be another target. He's looking at probably the fifth most targeted player on the team, because you figure AJ, Devontae, Dallas, and Saquon.
Yeah. No, he's not. But the guy is a known pass catcher. Let's gonna throw it up real quick right here. Good old Devontae Parker. He is. Let's see. So yeah, his career, like I said, Miami and New England, typically averages over his career. I say average. But yeah, like I said, he's gone down over the years, but 30 or 40 catches over the last 3 seasons. He's catching for close to 500 yards or more. He is that great third receiver right now, and I think that's a great move for the Birds, and especially as cheap as it comes.
Well, and I'll say this because I'm thinking maybe that I have a little bit of a higher. Holy shit! I don't know. Now I'm looking at this. I'm picking him as my early camp casualty. Cut casualty. Here's from Next Gen Stats, and this is courtesy of Warren Sharp. Care to guess where he finished the last 4 years in separation ranking?
I don't know.
Okay, 2020, out of 132 receivers, he was 132nd.
Oh boy.
2021, out of 127 receivers, he was 127th. 2022, out of 122 receivers, he was 122nd. And in 2023, out of 115, any you care to guess?
Let me just guess. He was 115.
You got it.
Yes.
Dude, I don't know how he's still. I honestly don't know how he's still in the league.
But here's the thing, though. If you wrap him around AJ, Smith, Saquon, Dallas, I mean, maybe. But the guy does have other numbers, though. I mean, that's the thing. Like, why would he be able to still catch 30 balls for 500 yards? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily bust territory, but holy shit. Like,
yeah, he's just not getting away from his defender.
Right.
I mean,
and the fact that he can catch the ball in traffic is one of the reasons that the Eagles even went after him.
Looked at him, and here's the thing too. Again, he comes cheap. They're not paying the whole thing. He's a veteran. He understands the league. He's not our number one, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, if he was the number one, then it would be one thing. But now, for a 1 year, 1.2 million, give it a shot, see how things go.
On the offensive side, so Eagles had a nice run with DeAndre Swift last year, if and when they used him correctly. We found out a lot of the offensive scheme as time went on, and it just didn't make any sense. And when DeAndre Swift was used properly, he put up a lot of yards. And when he was not used properly, the Eagles' running offense was just basically non-existent. DeAndre goes and signs a contract with the Bears. Good for him. Was happy about that. And that left basically Kenneth Gainwell at the top of the running back chain for about 2 hours.
Right.
And then Mr. Penn State comes back home, apparently. So we signed Mr. One Saquon Barkley from our division rivals. And wow, holy crap, man. Like, I'm like just utterly floored with this one because talk about it. I mean, this is not a bad talk on DeAndre.
No.
But for what the Eagles needed as a running back, Saquon just brings it. Oh, my goodness.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, here's the deal. So, first of all, I didn't think in a million years that Saquon Barkley would ever be an Eagle. Okay. He gets a 3-year, $37.75 million contract. Can be worth as much as $46.75 million, and it's got $26 million guaranteed. And I see people upset about it, complaining about it, and saying how, oh, he was this or he was that. He was always injured. He was never he was inconsistent with the Giants. Anybody would be inconsistent with the Giants. Their line sucked. Their line was terrible. And to the point where, like, look at the last couple running backs to run behind the Eagles' offensive line. Miles Sanders in 2022, right? And he did great. Then he goes to Carolina where he doesn't have the same offensive line, and he pretty much fell off a cliff, right? DeAndre Swift. And listen, I refuse to talk badly about DeAndre Swift. He was great while he was here for us. He did everything he was asked to do. I don't think we used him properly. But even so, before he got here, I think his tops was like 550 in a season, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 600 in a season. Here he runs for 1,200 in infrequent usage, right? What do you think a back the caliber of Saquon Barkley is going to do behind this offensive line?
Exactly. That's the crazy thing. Like, you have a guy, to me, and again, we're talking about today's standards for the NFL, who, you've got some premier players in this league. And I don't discount DeAndre Swift, and I don't discount some of the running backs, that get their whatever their I'm giving their credo, if you will. Saquon's, like, to me, like second Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And I know that the stats may not favor either guy at this point and whatever. Saquon's a bruiser, and he's going to give you what the Eagles need. I'm not saying that DeAndre wasn't the answer for, getting yardage or being a playmaker or whatever. Love the guy. I think he's a terrific playmaker. He's not what fit what the need was, though.
Right.
There's a need for the Christian McCaffrey-like player. And boy, Saquon just brings that all day long.
Yeah.
And we've got the playmaker now.
Right.
And it's, again, not a knock on DeAndre Swift.
No,
It's
not at all.
The stats show themselves out as this guy is taking a beating. He can take a beating, and he can catch the ball, and he can just shows up, and he just makes sense.
Right. And to be fair, I mean, the Eagles tried to get something done with DeAndre before the season or before the legal tampering, and they were unable to come to an agreement.
Yeah,
So he went and he got his money. And I
yeah,
don't fault him for that at all. You know what? He came home, he played in front of his home fans in his home city, and we loved him. He played great for us. Absolutely fantastic. It was great to watch him play here. He was I loved watching him here. But at the end of the day, it didn't really work out, and that's fine. We move on. I refuse. There's people trashing him, and I'm like, no, I refuse to talk trash on the guy. What did he do wrong for us?
right.
Like it's not like he didn't go out and do like Darius Slay, who still plays for the team, by the way, and former cornerback Steven Nelson. They were on Steven Nelson's podcast, and both the former Philadelphia Eagle and the current Philadelphia Eagle talk shit on the fan base. So, DeAndre Swift has done nothing but respect the team, respect the city, and respect the fans. I got nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah, no, I think the crazy thing to me was, you have the opening there. DeAndre was going to look for the out, or at least like he was probably told like, hey, look, man, we're not going to resign you. So you had that kind of heads up, because if you think about it, I mean, like, it wasn't like, really, it was a couple hours later the Eagles signed Barkley, right?
Right.
So good for the guy for, hey, he played it through for us, and then he goes to his X division rivals, basically, because DeAndre comes from the Lions, so good for him for seeing that out. But um, you know, as much as I hate to say this, he was a good like patchwork running back. Like he wasn't the guy. Saquon to me is the guy for now. He's the bruiser. He's younger than Derrick Henry. He's not like that kind of bruising ability, but that's what you need, because what we had before wasn't that. You had basically, to me, DeAndre and Gainwell and Boston Scott are all, to me, all very similar. You're very outside rushers. You can explode, and they all have the ability to just go.
Right.
But you need that middling guy. Saquon brings that all day long, and I'm super excited about it. And whether it's worth it or not, well, I guess remains to be seen. But
Yeah.
I think that's a hell of a thing. And look, it's a Penn State boy coming home.
Yeah. All right. So let's move over to the defense. Actually, we'll do special teams, then we'll do defense. So special teams, they extended Rick Lovato, long snapper. No big fanfare there, but it's important because you want to have consistency at that spot. And extended Braden Mann, who was the punter, who came in and replaced Aaron Siposs.
Yeah. So Brain Man's done a pretty decent job. I'll give him that.
Oh, he actually set records for the Eagles last year, like franchise records. So, amen. Let's keep him. And again, that's another thing that when they were wanting to get rid of Siposs, but they were kind of afraid to and hemming and hawing about it. It was because in their system, the punter is the holder for the kicker, and they didn't want to do anything to jeopardize Jake Elliott and his consistency. So now you've kept that consistency there. So good. Now, as far as defense is concerned, 3 moves so far. We know there are going to be more. And we know there should be more because both Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat were given permission to seek trades, with Josh Sweat posting that he's going to miss everybody.
Right. He's basically gone. I mean, that's
which sucks.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll hate to not have him on the team, but he was a player who last year, and granted, last year, it's really hard to judge players aside from James Bradbury from last year because nobody performed last year. Nobody. Except for Fletch. Fletch and BG were like pretty much the only defensive players you had that really did anything of value on the defensive side of the ball. Everybody else by the second half of the season was gassed or had just given up and really wasn't playing. So Sweat had, I think, what was it? I want to say he had 10 sacks or something like that in the first half of the season, and then none after that.
Yeah, he had a weirdly weird season. I'm trying to pull his game.
Oh, you know what?
game log.
Hassan actually got better as the season went on too, because he was injured at the start of the season. So I'm not going to talk shit on him either.
Yeah, no, I don't have his game log, but Sweat just had one of those it was a weird season for him. Started off hot, and then
And with the new defensive coordinator and everything, they kind of want to separate themselves as much as possible from last year. And so in doing that, unfortunately, changing up the scheme and changing things around, and they've just decided that they're gonna kind of jettison some of their building blocks on defense. Unfortunately, that means Josh Sweat. That means likely Hassan Reddick, especially since Hassan. Well, both of them are in contract years. The Eagles don't know that they want to go forward with them. So rather than pay them what they're requesting, the Eagles have given them permission to seek a trade, and we'll see what happens. But they did bring in Bryce Huff from
Yes, and that's a huge deal in my book. And I looked this up. So Bryce Huff had 10 sacks last year and played less than half the snaps
right
on the field. That's huge.
Right.
The whole reason why he was even seeking out of New York was that he just did not like the amount of time he was on the field. I think this is a huge signing. This is a big one. I do like the Bryce Huff deal.
So I'm optimistic. This was a point that was brought up by the Eagle Eye podcast, and so I want to give them a shout out. Not that they're going to listen to this or anything, but Reuben Frank had said, you can't always extrapolate a part-time player's sack numbers to more snaps. Reason being, they're playing a small amount of time. That means that they can go all out on every single snap that they're on the field. But knowing that you're going to be on the field for more time, you've got to conserve some energy, and it might take away from that pass rush and that ability. So hopefully that's not the case in this situation. Hopefully Bryce Huff gets out there and he's got the same motor going the entire game.
That's a fair point. I didn't see it that way. I thought, well, maybe they're just limiting him for other reasons, but to get veterans on the field or whatever, I mean? I didn't see it that way. So that makes sense. I get it. That's a good point. It's a good point.
So hopefully that's not the case, but I'm tempering my excitement. I'm excited to have him here, but I'm tempering my excitement, hoping for the best, but not expecting miracles.
Right.
At the second level of the defense, they signed a guy. I can't remember his first name. His last name is Baum, Baum, who played mostly.
Is it Nick Baum?
Might be. He was mostly a special teamer for the Saints. He ended up playing special defense. Zach Baum. Okay, so he's going to come in, and hopefully he's not the answer. He can play some off-ball linebacker, but he's more of a special teamer than he is anything else, which we need because Sean Bradley, who was one of our special teams captains, he tore up his knee last year, missed the whole season, and he was a free agent. So I don't know if the Eagles will bring him back, but if nothing else, he's a good camp body, somebody to have around. So we'll see. Hopefully there's more additions to come there. And then the biggest addition on the defensive side happened probably around like 7:30 today. was CJ Gardner Johnson.
Yeah, and I know you weren't a when I texted you CJ's back, and I know you weren't like all about it. But here's the thing: that's a lot of weak secondary in the free agency market. So this was not to be unexpected, I think. But I think that the thing that every Eagles fan is kind of looking at right now is, hey, the guy didn't necessarily exit on the best terms in terms of the fan base. So, but he's flying back home. So
yeah. So with CJ Gardner Johnson, there was a couple things, and this is something that I was critical of him when he was here prior, was tackling. Dude can hit. He hits. He just doesn't rap. And he's been somebody that's gotten hurt. Now, granted, with the Eagles, it was a freak injury. He lacerated his kidney, right? That's not, you can't blame a guy for lacerating their kidney. That's not something like, oh, he's got brittle bones. Nah, dude's rib cage cut his kidney open. Like, I'm not faulting somebody for having soft kidneys. They're supposed to be soft, you know? But he got hurt last year, missed a lot of the season with Detroit, talked a lot of shit on Philly and the fans, specifically the fans. And he also talked a lot of shit in the playoffs, and it came back to bite him in the ass when the Lions ended up losing that game to the Niners. He talked way too much shit and was saying it was over at halftime and all this stuff. Like, which honestly, we all thought it was. We all thought it was over at halftime, but then he had to go and run his stupid mouth, and it didn't turn out well for Detroit. So he is apparently apologized to the fans. I haven't read it yet. You know what? Whatever, man. We all make mistakes. Just when you go out there, please, please, please don't be stupid, and just rap when you're tackling, please. That's all I ask. It's not that much.
I want to say this before we close out here. This has been a quite exciting free agency period because we had the losses of Fletch and Jason Kelsey, and you just had this feeling that, man, like maybe this wasn't going to be retooling, but they were going to do anything exciting. They made some stuff exciting already.
Oh yeah. I mean, and look, we've still got it. This is literally day 2 of the legal tampering period. The league season, or the league year rather, starts tomorrow. Or is it tomorrow or is it Thursday?
I don't know.
I don't know. It starts soon. And then the floodgates open even more stuff. There's still rumors. There's still plenty of free agents out there. We still got the draft. There's some of the guys that I would have liked to see come to Philly have already signed with other teams. But look, that safety Simmons from, I think it's Justin Simmons from the Broncos, currently supposedly is between us and the Titans. I don't see how you pick the Titans over us, but that's neither here nor there. There's some other, obviously we have the situation with Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. And look, even the other teams in our division, if you look at them and look at some of the stories that are popping up. So Joe Mixon goes from being cut to traded to Houston.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny to me that they got rid of one piece of shit in Deshaun Watson and then trade for
another one. Yeah.
People. Look, I don't want anybody to do poorly in life. In certain situations, I feel like people need to be held accountable. And I was so happy that Joe Mixon was getting cut. And it was like, finally, this dude's been in trouble so much and nothing has happened. He hasn't had shit happen to him. So now he's finally going to be held accountable. He's getting cut. He's not going to be in the NFL roster. And granted, I figured it wouldn't be long before like Dallas signed him or somebody because, Dallas is a bunch of shitbags. But so he gets traded there. You got Derrick Henry going to the Ravens. You got Tony Pollard leaving the Cowboys and going to the Titans. You've got, hey, Washington. Look out for Washington. Washington signed Austin Eckler, and they got Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
And the rumor that I keep seeing pop up on fucking Bleacher Report, now take it for what it's worth because it's Bleacher Report, but apparently the Eagles are trying to work on a deal to get Justin Fields to be a QB2.
Really?
That's what I'm seeing. So there's a lot of work to be done. Because think about it, right now, the two quarterbacks on our roster is Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee. Two completely different styles of quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have somebody, you want your immediate backup to be somebody that plays a similar style so you can, just plug him in.
I've always said Justin Fields is poor man Jalen Hurts, so.
Well, I mean, dude, who knows? It might happen in the next few weeks. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen by the end of the week. Who knows? But there's so many moving parts, so much going on. Let me see if anything else has happened. The Texans signed Danielle Hunter, linebacker from the Vikings. And the Eagles are looking at more offensive line depth. And, also, it says here, two things. The first thing is it says that Aaron Rodgers is considering a run for vice president with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't going to vote for that dude anyway, but now I'm definitely not. Like, Jesus Christ. Oh, and the last thing it says here is Dallas sucks.